Hey everyone, it is Gabrielle with This Millennial Nation, and today we are talking to Steve Salis, who is the co-founder of And Pizza. And Pizza has over 10 different locations of awesome fast pizzas that are in the Washington, D.C. area, and they have just been exploding. But it's interesting because I met Steve about a year and a half ago, and quite a bit has been done as he's transitioned his role, and now he is really becoming what he calls this almost Picasso kind of collector of different retail opportunities. So Steve, thanks so much for joining us.
Sure, thanks for having me, Gabrielle. Appreciate it.
So I'm always fascinated. I come from a family of restaurateurs, and I'm always interested and actually make it happen. So take us back to that day that you had the first idea of pizza.
Sure, and just if I apologize, there was a glitch in the internet Google Hangout, so maybe perhaps you could restate the question.
Absolutely. Take us back to that day where you first got the idea for pizza.
Oh wow. Okay, sure. So, it was very interesting because the idea really formed from me being or spending my time in Manhattan. I was there for about 7.5 years. And it's funny because everyone talks about how wonderful the pizza is in New York, and I would say that probably holds true for about 2 to 3% of the total offerings that New York has in the pizza space. But nevertheless, I saw a glaring deficiency in the pizza industry, and I really wanted to bring a sense of reinvigoration, disruption to the space. And I had my aha moment when a couple things kind of happened, and it happened quite close in nature. The first thing that I noticed was you had all these mom and pop pizza shops on every corner, every sort of block, if you will. And it was an extremely bastardized business model, right? I mean, there was no barriers to entry, so everyone was kind of getting into that game. So nothing was really unique about it. And so I saw that as an opportunity. And then I saw the other side of it, which was this Neapolitan sort of finer food, higher end sort of program taking place. And I saw that to be very intriguing, where people were becoming much more dynamic in how they top their pies and the creation of sort of borrowing from different cuisines and in different regions, if you will, to create these unique pizzas. I saw that to be very unique, but it was very niche, not just from a palate perspective as far as what people could sort of intake and feel comfortable eating, but also from a financial perspective as well. And so I sort of felt if I could bring the speed, efficiency, and convenience of by the slice pizza shops, but with no pre-made pizza, but bring a semblance of that quality, sophistication, and that progressiveness that I was just alluding to on the finer dining side, if you will, then I thought, and we could sort of bridge that proverbial aisle. I felt that we could offer a product that would price people in. And that would be the first part. The second part was that, so I actually at the time had a bar, Tequila Taqueria bar in the West Village of New York. And I was on the second floor, and below me was a retail location. It was a Qdoba Mexican Grill, which I think they just changed their name to Qdoba Mexican Eats now. But in any case, and I happened to be sitting downstairs that day having a burrito, and the light bulb just kind of went off. I was like, because I was thinking through how do I sort of bring these things together. And at the time, there was no one really putting forth a pizza product that embodied some of the made-to-order assembly line principles that you've seen in other cuisines, and that was kind of my aha moment. And then from there was a lot of diligence and a lot of long sleepless nights trying to figure out how to put it all together and execute. But I think we've done a pretty good job of that.
So you had this aha moment up in New York, then somehow you get here to Washington, D.C., and you start going. What were those times where you felt like, what in the world am I doing? What have I gotten myself into? Am I insane?
Sure. Well, listen, I mean, I leveraged everything I had on this business. And, at the time, I moved to New York when I was just about to turn 21. And I moved to Washington when I was, 27 and a half years old. So almost 28. And so, a lot of things happened at that time. And so, sure, from running up every credit card I had to virtually running out of money and putting everything I had at risk on this business, relocating from Manhattan, a place where I had a nice career. I learned a lot about myself, both personally and professionally, built an amazing Rolodex. I had access to a lot of things being in New York for a long time. and literally stopping and cutting that off cold turkey and moving to a brand new environment like Washington, D.C., and having to start all over again is a really, I was actually referencing this yesterday with somebody else. It's tough. I mean, you're redoing it again. And as you get older and that has to happen, it becomes a lot more difficult to do, because when you're younger, you have less risk, and perhaps you're a little bit more, I don't want to call it outgoing, because I think I'm still quite outgoing, but I would just say you have less to lose, at that time. As you get a little older and more things are around you, it becomes riskier. And we took a lot of risk, making a decision not to build a business in New York. You kind of look backwards and you say, hey, what are those inflection points, in the maturation process of your life? And you look back and you say, hey, it was one of the, if not one of the best decisions we could have made not to build this business in New York. And a lot of reasons for that. And I won't get into it, obviously, for the purpose of the time. But so picking a location, meaning a marketplace, learning that market, starting all over again, moving your life here. Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's so many, like I said, sleepless nights. I mean, trying to figure everything out, because you're starting over. It's like hitting the reset button, and then while you're doing that, no one knows who you are. You got to build your reputation again. You got to get everyone on board, whether it be landlords or other resources, if you will. If you're trying to build a retail place, you got to get people comfortable with your operating model. It doesn't exist, by the way, so you really don't have anything to foot to. We had an oven technology that we were so blessed to find early on in our sort of our findings when we were trying to figure out what type of technology we were going to use to cook our pizzas, to make our model work. And it was a very unique model that no landlord's ever seen before, and we didn't need certain restaurant-like features like hoods and things like that, which we had to get people to get comfortable with. I mean, there was a tremendous amount of education, I think, for me personally, learning a lot about myself as I try to do every day, but also educating those around us to try to get people to sort of get on the ship and ride the wave.
And what we're talking a lot about is just disruption, disrupting the status quo and going in and not being afraid of what's been done, not being afraid of precedent. I'm curious about how you've been able to set a culture. Pizza is really well known for kind of this tribe mentality, that everyone's a part of the team, and there's kind of a bigger force or bigger culture than just making pizza. How did you consciously create a culture in your company that was all inclusive and really exciting?
Well, absolutely. I think first and foremost, it starts with leadership and really having a set of principles that are uncompromising. I think you have to be very clear about what those principles are and how those principles can or cannot affect an organization. I think it's extremely vital when you're going through the process. Today, we have 15 restaurants open, and we have another 10 more in development. We have hundreds, many hundreds. At some point, we'll be in the thousands, I suspect, quite soon, of people in our company. And these are some of the best people in the world, because our business would not be anywhere close to where it's at without the efforts of everybody involved. And I think it's extremely important that when you go to build an organization, any organization, but even one that I think, frankly, by many standards has grown quite quickly, I think it's extremely important to build a very strong platform, making sure that everyone that you align yourself with is better than you. There's no egos in the room. It's okay to agree, and it's okay, as I say, to agree to disagree. But you have to be very clear about what the mission is and why it's important, and making sure that you're constantly, as I'd say, keeping your finger on the pulse with the people that you're working with to ensure that there's alignment with the greater goals of the organization. And I think then from there, on the topic of alignment, I think it's then from top to bottom and bottom to top, it's making sure that everybody, to the best of our abilities, are aligned with our principles. So what I mean by that is, I think there's something to be said for compatibility. Generally speaking, I'm big on probability, if you will, and I think that there's certain things that can happen that can have a higher probability of success versus other things that can happen that have less of a probability for success. And I think with people, which is the hardest thing, hiring people and human capital. We have a very highly human capitally intensive organization. People are your greatest assets, and so you have to be very manic about how you think about your talent, how you source your talent. How you bring your talent in, how do you set an expectation early on, how do you create multiple filters right? To ensure that we don't let bad eggs in, because we look at our businesses as sacred. We think we have wonderful businesses, and we want to make it so that it's a privilege to work in our organization, not an obligation, but not in a demeaning way. Just simply that we have to earn it every day. You're never, just because you were successful yesterday doesn't mean that guarantees you success tomorrow. And so I think it's that constant strive for excellence that I think is crucial. But you have to make sure that people that you're working with, either very closely or at any level, have to have and embody a lot of the similar characteristics and principles and values in order for the organization to work effectively. Last point I would make on the values is, values is very behavioral driven. I've never been very big on setting these overly stuffy sort of rules, because at the end of the day, the values and principles are the rules. And so you either embody them or you don't. And it's actually as clear and concise as that. And so that's why, again, it's extremely important to make sure that you're aligning yourself with wonderful people, and making sure that there's an alignment, that they bring a lot of similarities in their personal life to your organization. There's a lot of people we haven't hired that are extremely talented people, Gabby, that have actually reached out to me because we didn't hire them, thanking me because I let them know that culturally they were not the right fit. It had nothing to do with their credentials. It had everything to do with the culture, the cultural aspects of our brand, and that they happen to be very successful both in C-level positions right now in other companies. And they're very happy that it went down that way. And I think you can never be afraid of making sure that culturally you look at that first, and then secondly you look at the credentials.
I think that's a fantastic principle, and I'll often tell people I can teach someone skills, but I can't teach someone to be teachable, and I can't teach someone to be ethical.
You can't.
And those are the things you have to have when you walk in the door.
We call them foundational skills, right? So they are like the essence of oneself. You're either a good person or you're not a good person, okay? And whatever you choose to be is whatever it's going to be. You're either ethical or you're unethical. That's it. You're either, so it's like we try to keep things very black and white. We really want to play in the black and white. We don't want to play in the gray. It makes it challenging when you have a highly human capitally intensive organization. But it is what it is. It's the cost of doing business. And, when we bring people in, we take care of them. We nurture them. We want to develop them. We want to make them better people first and better professionals second. That is our fiduciary responsibility as leaders in our organization. And, we want to have some fun along the way. And, hopefully the chips fall where they fall.
So what kind of business training? You had already been owning a bar taqueria up in New York and came down here to launch. But what kind of official business training did you have, if any, before you got into this entrepreneurial journey? None.
I'm purely street and life experience driven. I mean, all my learnings are predominantly that. I'm a college dropout, proud of saying it. I went to school on a basketball scholarship. I left school after my sophomore year. I realized that school was not for me. I made a decision to leave a seemingly to many in the environments I grew up in to be a very wonderful situation for a path that I chose to take. I think I've been very contrarian in my life, as evidence to where I'm at in retrospect to those I grew up with, and that's okay. It's not about I'm better or worse or they're better. It's not about that. It's just I think it's extremely important to lead your life the way you want to lead your life. At the end of the day, you have to look at yourself and you have to feel comfortable and confident with the things that you're doing. And so, for me, I've purposely put myself in a lot of very uncomfortable situations, which has done a lot for me, because what it's done is it's challenged myself to learn more about myself. It's challenged myself to put myself in positions, because life's funny. Life has a funny way of working itself out. Perhaps you may have a situation that may look very similar to one you had many years ago. Just maybe some of it might be a little different, but mechanically it's quite comparable. And I think being able to tap into those different experiences to leverage that on a going forward basis, I think is absolutely invaluable. I tell people that you can't put a numerical price on education. And I think, for me, perhaps, instead of spending money on going to school, which I was blessed not to do, which probably made me look crazier, for walking away from that. I've spent my money in other ways, through building companies, mostly have been very successful. I wouldn't go out to say anything's been a failure, because I really don't look at it like that. But I would simply say that, some things don't work as well as other things. I think those are where your opportunities live and lie. And I think if you learn from them, you're constantly striving to be better and to gain more knowledge, applicable knowledge, that is. And I think that's what's worked for me. And look, it doesn't necessarily mean it works for other people, but it's worked for me.
And one of my questions for you, but you answered it, was this idea of failure and rejection. And I think you said it really well. And you said, I don't even look at it as failure. You know, it's an opportunity. And changing physical locations will change your mental location as well. And so it's like that environment shift that when you move, you're kind of forced to rediscover yourself all over again, and you can reinvent yourself for the better. And it sounds like that's absolutely what you've been doing. Since you haven't had that formal education that everyone, at least when we were coming of age, everyone was encouraging us to do, like, oh, you didn't go to college, you know, what's wrong with you? Now we're starting to see more of an embrace of individual, non-traditional kind of thing, because we've realized that we're learning so much more from life. So where have you picked up your knowledge? I mean, mentorship, I know is really important to you. I mean, and Pizza has some incredible people on the board, from, you know, Ruby Tuesday and City Sports. I mean, how have you been able to surround yourself with people who, as you said, are better than you?
Sure. So I think this is loaded. So let me first start off by saying everything's about perspective. So, you know, it really, you know, about making the transitions and the challenging. It's all about perspective. So I want to be clear on that. I happen to have a perspective that works for me. Perhaps it doesn't work for others, but it works for me. So just wanted to put that out there. The second thing I would simply say is, look, I mean, we live in a different world today. You know, the access to information. I'm not entirely sure if it's awesome or it's not awesome. I think it probably just simply depends on what you're accessing the information for. But you really have, you know, you have everything in your fingertips today, and it's truly remarkable. I mean, it really is. I mean, you can become a czar at anything now if you want to spend hours on it. I mean, in a day you could become a czar on something, and I don't know, it's just so fascinating. I would say that life experiences, being highly curious and very inquisitive. I'm not afraid to ask a lot of questions because I want to understand. I like the fact that I've always had a very curious nature to myself, which I think has helped me kind of go down the rabbit holes a little bit, and luckily I've ended up on the right side of that. And then regarding talent, you know, look, I think I think the first thing you have to do is you got to be clear about what your strengths and weaknesses are. You got to figure out then how to combat those deficiencies, if you will. With very strong, talented people. Again, no ego is better than you are, and you want that to happen. As a leader in an organization, you have to have people that are better around you all the time, because that's the only way the organization can thrive. You have to entrust people. You have to give them a long rope, you know, to do what they need to do. Pertaining to the board, look, I mean, I think that going back to invaluable, I think having people that have been around the block and back many more times than you, just by sheer result of being around longer than you, I think is crucial. And it doesn't mean you have to agree to everything that they think or say. You know, sometimes, you know, their way of doing things were done, you know, and maybe perhaps a little bit dated, but I think it's about perspective. It's about listening and understanding and digesting, and then working towards you know, learning from them and having good, you know, good solid conversations that maybe they can learn from you too as well. I think it has to be reciprocal in some way. You know, I think there's something to be said for relationships being reciprocal. So if I can give back, I like to, you know, and I think I can do that. I think I have done that.
And I think that's important for any relationship. I mean, this idea of reverse mentoring is really big in corporate America today, where they're looking to the next generation, us, as people who can actually contribute, not just someone who's going to come in, punch a time clock, and then leave. So we are just about at our end. So we've got the final round of questions. If you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and ask them.
Even if I'm not ready, you're going to ask them anyways, and I have to be prepared to fire off.
This is true. Absolutely. Okay, so first question is, what do you know now that you wish that you knew back then when you were first getting started?
Oh, boy. The importance of communication and alignment. I think it's extremely important not to assume that somebody else that you're working with or engaging with just thinks they know what they know or don't know. I think it's extremely important to make sure there's constant communication and constant realignment. Someone said something really wise to me recently. They said, you know, alignment's not an event, it's an ongoing process. And it is like probably the most wisest thing one could say, because it's 100% true. So I would say that would be one thing. And if you gave me more time, I probably could rattle off many more, but I think that's a good one.
Awesome. That's incredible. Okay, the second question is, what is the best piece of business advice that you've ever received?
Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered.
Wait, what was it? It broke up a little bit. What was that one more time?
Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered.
Hey, that is a good one. Okay, next question. What books are you reading right now?
Yeah, I'm not a big book reader. I want to be very clear. I'm not a big book reader. I will say though that I am reading Trump: The Art of the Deal, and the only reason I'm reading is because I'm very fascinated by what's taking place with this impending election and all the things going on right now with Donald Trump. I think it's a very fascinating situation. And so I've never read his book, and a buddy of mine, a business colleague of mine, was saying, "Have you read the book?" I said, "No, I haven't." And I happened to go downstairs to the bookstore, and I was able to obtain the book. So I've been reading. It's pretty fascinating. Pretty fascinating book. But
I am actually reading books as well. So.
Historically, I'm not a big reader. But like you, I actually think I'll have a really wonderful book to write at some point.
I believe it.
Okay. To put it in too as well.
Final question. It's a crazy one, but it's my favorite to ask. So, Steve, if the 12-year-old version of you were to meet you today and see what you're doing, what would he think about what you do for a living?
Oh. I think he'd be really proud of the fact that, in 20, not even 20 years, a lot's happened. I think, I've made a lot of decisions that have been best for me, which I think is something by which shows that, I'm setting out to fulfill the type of life that I'm looking to fulfill. And, I think coming from New Hampshire, which is where I was at 12 years old, and being in I'd call it a very reclusive environment, to kind of step out from those boundaries and be where I'm at, and frankly not anywhere close to where I want to be. I think I would say proud. I would say quite proud of what's taken place.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thanks so much for joining us today. And I just want to recognize you for your own internal leadership, for your embracing and recognizing of other people, of realizing that people who are different and diverse than you know more than you and think differently than you, and your willingness to continually press forward and to be curious. So thanks so much again, and we look forward to hearing good things from you soon.
All right. Thank you so much for thinking of me, and best of luck with everything. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.